Hey everyone, Sali is here. Welcome back to the channel. Today we are diving into another important tool, which is Memo. And I promise you, I'm going to cover everything you need to know about Memo, how to use it, when to use it, and why we need to use Memo in React the simple way and of course completely. Then let's go. So what exactly is Memo? Before I get started to explain Memo for you, there is something you need to know about how React component works. By default in React, every time a parent component re-render, it's gonna force the child component to re-render as well, even if no props and no state change inside the child component. So if nothing change inside the child component, we don't need exactly to re-render it. And that's exactly when Memo comes to help us. We can prevent unnecessary re-render by wrapping the child component with Memo, of course, and after doing that, the child component never gonna re-render by its parent unless a prop or state or something change inside it. And that's cool because we are caching the child component and we are reading it from the cache for next renders. And by doing that, we are optimizing the performance of our application. And that's exactly what Memo does for us. Let me show you an example for better understanding. Let's go. So we have a very simple application here. Let me explain it for you. There are two pieces of states here, counter 1 and counter 2. They both are numbers. I just put a like here to show you how and when this component will be re-rendered. Of course, we need two buttons to update these states. If we click on this button, it's gonna update counter 1 and it gonna goes up one by one. And if you click on the second button, it's do the same thing and it's gonna update the counter 2. Cool. And here I just display the value of these states and below them I put the child component. We are in the parent component here and here we have the child component. In the child component, we have nothing. I just put a log here to show you how and when this component will be re-rendered. Cool. Let's go to the browser to see how this works. If I refresh the page, we can see that, yes, we have the parent render and child render. It's because the initial render and it's cool. But if I click on increase counter, we can see that now we have parent re-render and child re-render. If I click on the increase counter 2, again we can see that parent re-render and child re-render. But here it's obvious we are changing the state here, then we need a re-render for parent component. Cool. But I have a question for you. Do we change anything inside the child component? Do we pass it a props and change it, or a state here and we are changing that state? Of course, no. Then we don't need to re-render the child component. We can prevent the unnecessary render by wrapping the child component with Memo. We need to import Memo from React. Memo from React. And then we can wrap the child component. It's really easy to use it like this. And now let's go back to the browser, we refresh the page. We can see that, yes, at the first time for initial render, we have parent render and child render. But if I click on increase counter, now we have just the parent render. If I click on the counter 2, we can see that again, we have the parent re-render. Because nothing changed inside it, we don't pass any props or something inside the child component, then we don't need to re-render it. And now we are optimizing the performance of our application by caching entire of a component. So as I said at the first of the video, we can prevent unnecessary render for entire component like child component when we wrap it with Memo. And after doing that, the parent component never gonna force the child component to re-render again unless a prop or state or something really changed inside the child component. To show it to you, I just pass the counter 2 state as a prop to the child component, and here into the child component I just display the value of counter 2. Let's go to the browser to see how this works. If I refresh the page, we have the initial renders for both component, parent render and child render. Let me clear it. And now if I increase the counter 1, remember that pass the counter 2 as a prop here. If I increase the counter 1, we can see that we just have the parent render because nothing changed inside the child component. We don't pass the counter 1 here. But if I click on increase counter 2, we have the parent render and the child render, because now we are really change something inside the child component, and that's cool. That's exactly what we want. And that's not like that we don't have any time, never any re-render for this component. If really something change inside the child component, yes, we have a re-render for it. But if nothing changed, we don't have a re-render for the child component. And the last thing I want you to know is never confuse memo with useMemo. Yes, they are really similar, but they are not the same. I have a complete video about useMemo right here. Make sure to watch it. But for now, just know that memo is for caching entire of a component like child component. But useMemo is a hook which lets us to cache the returned value from a function. Make sure to watch the useMemo video. You will understand everything you need to know. And there we are. Now you know everything you need to know about Memo. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you enjoyed it, make sure to subscribe my channel and leave a comment down below for me. See ya.